Good evening, everyone. Welcome to episode 54 of the Thrifty Marketer Talks. Last week, we had a fantastic guest. One of my favorite people came on the show, and it was amazing to have his views on artificial intelligence, what it's going to do to us marketers, right? So, as I mentioned, this season, I have not kept the show or invited guests who are into marketing and business alone. This season, we will be meeting a lot of coaches. We will be meeting a lot of leadership trainers, a lot of entrepreneurs, etc., etc. So today, I have an amazing guest. I cannot wait to start the chat with her. But before that, 2022, we have seen a lot of examples of toxic leadership, right? We have seen it in the business world. We have seen it in the world. There is a war going on as we speak right now. So leadership is one of the areas where a lot of focus is going on. And today's guest has been doing fantastic work in developing amazing leaders. So today I have Dr. Hope Zoeller with me. She is the founder and president of HOPE, which is Helping Other People Excel LLC, which is a firm that specializes in facilitating leader success at every level of an organization. For over 15 years of a professional career, Dr. Zoeller worked at UPS in various roles, including customer service, training and development, and employee relations. For the past 18 years, she has been consulting various organizations on leadership development. So she is our go-to resource or go-to person for learning about what leadership is all about. Dr. Zoeller is also a professor at Spalding University, instructing in the Master of Business Communication program. She has a doctorate in leadership education from Spalding University, a Master of Education in Training and Development from the University of Louisville, and a Bachelor's of Arts in Communication Psychology from Bellarmine University. She has co-authored with Dr. Joe DeCensi, Hope for Leaders Unabridged Volume 1 and Hope for Leaders in the 2020s. New Issues to Face, New Problems to Solve, New Hope for the Future, Volume 2. So today we will be discussing leadership in action and some amazing strategies for success in today's world. Without further ado, let me just bring her on.
Hi, welcome. Thank you so much for having me today and allowing me to talk about something that, as you said, I am so very passionate about in this world of so much toxic leadership and so many opportunities to show up better for ourselves, for our people, and just for the world.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for taking time out, Doctor. And I'm pretty sure this session is going to help a lot of people who are going to watch it live as well as later on the YouTube channel. So I have curated a set of questions for you. So if you're ready, we can start it off.
Go right ahead.
All right. So as I mentioned, the title of today's talk is Leadership in Action. So let me start with that. What does the term leadership in action even mean?
Well, for me personally, having been in this industry for over 20 years, it's really kind of evolved in what that means. And I think the pandemic has even further evolved for me, that definition of action. And it used to be for me, when I was in corporate America, it meant walking the talk, doing what you say you're going to do, which are all extremely important things. Right. But as I was sitting with this question and really, reflecting on, again, just kind of the evolution of leadership, especially through the last 3 years, what I have come to realize with that is it really is more about being present. So when you think about the word action, I really think about being present. And it means, being in touch with what is the reality of your people? What is it that they're going through? What are their struggles? And nothing gave us more of an opportunity to be in action with that and show up with that than what we experienced through the pandemic. And I think, as I'm talking to people, and you're probably experiencing this in your role too, we're just now learning some of the side effects, some of the consequences, some of the things that people have gone through and how that's greatly changing the way in which they lead, the way in which they show up. So for me, it's how can we continually be present? And by saying that, I mean, I need to know the people that I'm working with. And I don't say that are working for me. I say that are working with me. I need to be in touch with what is it they need? How can I better show up? How can I better serve who they are, where they are? And it isn't about me. And, the leaders, and you've probably had those leaders in your life, or you've met those people that when they show up, it is more about them than it is about the people that surround them. And you can't do it alone. Leadership is not a solo journey. It's about developing a great team of people. And so for me, when I think about action, it's about being present. It's about showing up. It's about being in touch with the reality of where things are.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. Pandemic showed us a reality. It was a reality check for most of the leaders, in organizations, especially how did they show up for their peers or their team members. And it was a real test, litmus test, which showed us who are the real leaders and who are not. So thank you so much for that fantastic start. So in your opinion, what are the key qualities that make a great leader in today's modern world? The needs are different. The asks, the situations are different. So what are some of the qualities you believe will make a person a great leader?
Well, again, just kind of talking about this evolution, and we all had time to ponder a lot. And so when we were putting together our second leadership book, Hope for Leaders in the 2020s, we really thought about, like, as we're coming out of this, or we're in the middle of this, what do leaders need to be showing up and doing? And I say this often, that leadership is a lot of common sense that's not common practice. But there are definitely a few things that have really hit home harder, and I believe will not be acceptable if people don't have those things, because people do quit bad leaders. They don't necessarily quit bad organizations. And so, the 4 things, and I've crafted an acronym for it, and my HR colleagues love it because they literally love it, because you can speak love and it stands for something. So when I think about, what are the 4, if I had to narrow it to that, there's so many more things that are important, but if I had to narrow it to that, I think about love. And the first part of love is really a listening ear. And that goes back to being present. I can't be in touch with where things are if I can't really truly listen to you. And, often it's more of listening to fix than it is listening to understand or listening to support. And so, for me as a leader today, it's just letting people know that you're there to hear them, letting them know that you're there, not always to fix something, but to be a supportive person for them and guide them and not judge them, be curious, and critical. And then, that's where the O comes in for that objective mind. I have got to be open to hearing someone's opinion when it may be different from mine. I mean, it's interesting when people will hire somebody and you hear them say, I just hired a mini version of myself and I'm so excited. And then 6 months later, they're like, I hired a mini version of myself. I mean, it's like, how can I be open to that diversity and to, to really thinking differently than maybe I have before. And as I said, it's not a solo journey. It's about building a team and bringing people together. Absolutely. And then the V is versatile attitude. If you didn't learn some versatility through the pandemic, I don't know what would teach you that. I mean, I've been doing 20 years of yoga, and the pandemic taught me more about being versatile than yoga ever did, because I was pretty much an in-person person. That's how I did coaching. That's how I showed up. And then it was like, okay, if I want to survive and continue to provide hope, I got to figure out a different way to connect with people. And leaders all over the world were doing the same thing. So it wasn't like, this was just my struggle. And I'm sure you were the same way. It's like, can I do things differently than I've ever done? And how can I encourage my people to be doing that as well? And not fear it, but really welcome what good changes can come from it. And then lastly, which is probably one of the most important leadership qualities I have found above the listening, which goes in with the listening, is the empathetic heart. Is understanding, going back to that being present, of understanding that all of us are struggling with something somewhere at some moment in time. And it's not that I've had to walk a mile necessarily exactly as your mile, but it's that I understand you're walking some struggling miles right now. And how can I walk beside you and be there for you and support you in a way that is going to help you survive, not only survive, but thrive.
Absolutely. I think the LOVE acronym which you have is perfect, because those are the exact qualities I believe leaders need to really nurture in themselves, because we are all working from home. I'm working with a remote team. They are all in different parts of the country. We are not able to meet in person, but these qualities make all those challenges go away to a certain extent. So thank you so much for that acronym. I will remember that for sure. My next question, since there are constant changes and challenges in today's fast-paced business environment, how can leaders effectively navigate and adapt to these constant changes? What are your thoughts on that?
There's a couple of things along the lines with that. And first, it does start with the leader. It starts with the leader having, and I've listened to, and I really enjoy your podcast. I'm listening to some of your past podcasts, and this has come up because this is to me relevant in the industry and life in general, is having that open mindset to what change can bring. And, it really goes back to that versatile attitude. If I'm a leader and I'm so stuck in the way that I have been doing things and I'm not open to that, it's going to be very challenging for you to lead people through change. And so, for you looking at it, it's what is the good that can come from this? And, an interesting element, because I've been dealing with change, for many years with organizations and teaching it in grad school. The interesting thing that leaders across the board fail to do is to allow the emotional part of change happen. And when I'm, taking a team through change, or I'm leading a leader to lead people through change, one of the big things that I always encourage leaders to do is to bring people together to talk about it. Because you and I both know that most changes are not optional. They come from down. It's not something that I can either do this or not do this. This is going to be the way that it is. So I can like it, learn to like it, or leave it. But I think where leaders do have that flexibility in helping people transition is allowing them to feel the pain of mourning. Because when you think about change, it is a lot like the death of something. It's something dying and something new beginning. And so I will actually take teams through a grief session. We will go through the stages of grief, and I will ask each person to put a Post-it note on each one of the stages. And, some are in anger, some are in denial. And then you find that actually some are already at acceptance, because there are people, believe it or not, they're not always in the majority in organizations, but there are some people that, they call themselves change junkies. I love it. It's like, this could be better than what it was before. And then you have some people that are frightened because they don't know if they're going to be successful in that new piece. And so I think when we skip the emotional part of change, even for ourselves as leaders, we've got to go through that process first. And then we have to allow that opportunity for our teams to talk about it. And so while we might not be able to, say we're going to do this or not do this, there is always some flexibility in how we can go about bringing that change in. So, what are some things that we can do to adjust it to be successful? And, I found the leaders that stop and pause and let people have that emotion, it's so much more successful than just skipping over it and just hoping everybody gets on board with it. And if you don't, like I said, you like it, you learn to like it, or you leave it. And in a world today where we've got the great rethink, the great resignation, can we really be affording for people to just go as quickly as they did before? Because it's much harder to replace, especially really good people.
Absolutely. I completely agree with that. It's kind of it's a very as I asked in the question, it's very fast paced. And I think what you said is also right. People don't leave organizations, people leave bad managers. So it's high time for leaders to adapt faster than earlier. Times are changing. It's better to change according to those. Right. So one of the major, key result areas, or KRAs, for every leader is inspiring and motivating their teams these days, because times are tough. There's a lot of talks of recession looming around. There is people quitting. There is a lot of changes happening in personal and professional lives. So inspiring and motivating their teams becomes the biggest challenge for most of the leaders. So if you can share any specific strategies or techniques that leaders can use to inspire and motivate their teams, that would be fantastic.
And it's interesting because I had a CEO ask me once if there was one leadership book that they could read and that would give them what to do. If you had to have one cookbook, what would that cookbook be? What would be all of the things that you would get from that cookbook that would satisfy, all of the things that you need, all the nutrients. And,
Right.
what I will say to that in reference to motivation is there is no one size fits all for that.
Right.
And it's going back to really that being in touch with your people. And if you don't know what motivates each person on your team, ask. And so I encourage always, and people that I'm working one-on-one with doing leadership coaching, I'm like, do you have regular one-on-ones? And I love it when I always get the pushback of, well, we talk to each other every day.
Right.
Not what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about,
Right.
if you're in person, I'm not talking about the passing, out in the operation or in the office. I'm not talking about that. If it's virtual, I'm not talking about, oh yeah, we jump on and just chit chat. I'm talking about define time to talk about how is this person doing? Emotionally, mentally, physically, checking in. What are their biggest challenges right now? What are roadblocks they're having that I, as a leader, cannot fix for you necessarily? But how can I support? How can I support you? And, in addition to the one-on-ones, what I have been encouraging leaders to do is to be doing stay interviews.
Right.
Because by the time you get to an exit interview, it's too late. Whatever the issues are or were, the person has already made their mind up that they're gone. And so, even if on a quarterly basis, you're checking in saying, are you still motivated in your job? Are you still enjoying this? What are some things that I do as a leader that motivates you? And what are some things that I do that might demotivate you? Because as leaders, we can think we are working really hard.
Right.
And we get so frustrated because, we're driving north and we realize we turn around and our team's like, hey, we're down on the beach south. We're not going to the cold weather with you. We want warm weather. So it's just that constant checking in. And I think as a leader, that's one of your most important responsibilities, and I think sometimes leaders get caught up with so many other things and don't realize that the main thing that they're responsible for is their team and how can I best support you, be a resource for you. And if things aren't working out, how do I help you make that better?
Right. Yeah. Most of the times leaders do this mistake of assuming things. They assume things are fine, or maybe somebody is not doing well because they are just lazy or something like that. They never take the pain to understand exactly what's going on in their life, or maybe professional, personal life. They don't invest that time in that. So that's a fantastic advice right there. Having one-on-ones, regular, scheduled one-on-ones. To be honest, that's. Thank you for that answer. Right. So there are some questions coming from social media. I will keep that for the end of it. In your experience, Doc, what are some common mistakes that leaders make, which you have seen across the years? There will be some common trends or common mistakes which people tend to make, and how can they avoid them?
Well, I'll start with, it was a mistake I made when I first got into management, that it was, I can do everything myself.
Right.
And if you don't learn the art of delegation early on, you are never going to be successful. And even sadder, your people will never be successful because they're not going to learn and grow. And, I remember working with a leader that took great satisfaction in when he was not there. There was chaos.
Right.
Because they needed him to answer questions. And it was almost this self-satisfying ego feed of like, see, you can't, as a leader, you should, when you're gone and it runs smoothly, that should be the biggest compliment to your leadership, is that people know, they can jump in, they can take things over. So the first one is, it's just not learning what is it that I need to be working on? And, unfortunately, when leaders get promoted, what made them good at what they did versus what makes them great as a leader, there's quite a gap. And, you really go less from being this doobie of checking off a task every day to more about moving really the vision of the organization and the bigger level things. And, so along with that, one of the best things I ever learned from a leader that was just really motivational and inspirational in my life, to the whole reason why I'm here with you today, is just encouraging me to go out and be me and, my gifts. You would go into his office and, bring him a problem. And so instead of just immediately taking that from you and doing something with it, he would say, so what is one idea you have to fix it? Right. And I would be like, okay, well, that's what you get paid to do. You need to be thanking me, giving me a raise because I've identified this problem. And,
Right.
what I learned about him is he wasn't creating a team of problem admirers. He was creating a team of problem solvers. So
Right.
every time you came in, you had to have at least one idea for how to solve this problem. And I'm not saying that that was always going to be the idea that fixed it, but the point is that he wasn't always owning these problems. And, I see, especially in, the several decades I've been doing this, I see leaders always feeling the pressure of when, especially new leaders, someone comes in, they bring you a problem.
Right.
You
Right. Right. Right.
automatically take it and then they walk out. And then by the
Right.
end of the day, you have this, box full of problems that maybe weren't even yours to solve. And if I've identified a problem and I'm invested in it, then I
Right.
really should be given that accountability and that responsibility to be, helping collaborate to figure it out. Because as a
Right.
leader, you can't solve everything. You shouldn't be. And then again, if you are, what kind of team are you developing or creating? And
Right.
we need a world of more problem solvers, not people that just walk past something and think it's someone else's responsibility to fix it. If I've
Absolutely. Absolutely.
identified it, I have some stake in it. And what my leader would find is how really important that problem was to you. Because if you couldn't come up with one idea and you just walked away and the conversation was never had again, how important was that really to you? So as a leader, you might begin working really hard to solve these things that weren't that big of an issue. But
Right.
when people are vested in helping you solve them, you know that it was a big issue and they
Right.
want to be a part of the problem solving.
Absolutely, absolutely. I'm actually kind of guilty of that. One of my year-end feedback, one of my team members gave me was, Vivek, you need not be part of all projects. Let us do it and commit mistakes, and then you step in when, if need be. So I've taken it. It's very hard. It is very hard for me to delegate some of the times, but I am learning to do that. So that's a fantastic advice right there.
Mhm.
So another thing which I wanted to talk about was, learning and development, right? Most good leaders foster a culture of continuous learning and development. So how can leaders go down that route? How can they foster a culture of continuous learning and development within their organization?
First and foremost is making time for it, because I can't tell you the number of times that I have gone to an organization and they've invested a lot of money in
Right,
this leadership development. And we were supposed to have 25 people in the class and 3 showed up because there was I'm, air quoting here, a crisis.
right,
And it seemed that every time we would have this training, there was a crisis.
right,
And what was being told was what's most important was taking care of the thing right in front of you. And it was always, to
right,
me, a reactionary thing. Now, I'm not saying that there are not really crises in their thing, but if the norm is that every time we're trying to create space for this learning, something pulls you away from that, what are
right,
you really saying is how important that is? So first and foremost is creating time and space for it.
right,
Second is encouraging people to take risk.
right,
With that, making failure an option.
right,
Because if you work for someone that perfection is the goal, then they're going to be afraid to learn and grow. And I had it was a VP of marketing that I was coaching, and he got feedback on his 360 that people perceived him to be perfect.
right,
And he took this as a huge compliment. And so as his leadership coach, I said, I want to pull you back from that. And I really want you to think about what that is communicating. And he said,
right,
well, what do you mean? And I said, well, if people on your team think you're perfect, what
right.
is that communicating to them if they feel they are not? And if they can't live up to that expectation? So, and you think about marketing, you want people that are creative, that are
Yes,
brainstorming, putting things out there. But if they are afraid, by his metric of success, it won't be successful. They're not even going to try.
absolutely.
Because perfection is what they are seeing modeled. There's no vulnerability of, I fail. We all fail. And then what
Right,
did we learn from it? How did we come back from that?
right,
So I just, I think you've got to, again, create the supportive space for people to learn and grow. But then you also have to support them when it doesn't work out. I believe people don't wake up every day like, I hope I can go to work and fail today. Just let me fail, please. but failure is going to happen. And, I'm sure you can relate to this. I've learned more from my failures than I've ever learned from any amazing success.
Absolutely.
Because I learned
100%.
how to get back up again and how to do it differently and more intelligently, as Henry Ford would say. I'm
Absolutely.
smarter and better for having gone through that. But you as a leader set the biggest example for that, because if you're not encouraging that failure and you're telling people that perfection is the goal, not progress, then you're creating people that will never be able to get to their highest capacity, because they won't stumble along the way to be able to get there.
Absolutely. You don't want team members who want to play safe. You want people who want to take risks.
Yes.
Right. So one question about, young leaders, what advice do you have for aspiring leaders looking to take their career to the next level?
I would say be open to all opportunities. And, I also say open to grace, and that, open to other people's failures and open to disappointments from things that don't work out like you think they're going to work out. Be okay with not knowing where the journey goes.
Right.
Be okay with just the process of it. I mean, you and I can probably sit here and think about a number of different things we've done in our younger selves.
Right.
Then in the moment, you had absolutely no idea how that experience in that moment was going to guide you to even doing the Thrifty Marketer, to even having a podcast. It doesn't all have to match up and match together. And there's a lot of people that sit with discomfort of when they're asked to do something. How is this working towards a bigger thing? I'm not saying that we don't do things that are in alignment and be intentional about, like, we have a goal to do something. So, we do a lot of things to help us be able to get to that goal.
Right.
But, when I work in organizations, before someone gets promoted to a C-suite level, they have to work in almost every area of the company for a given period of time, so that they have an understanding when they're leading the organization of how this department could be struggling, because this department, this is the way they see things, and it's not the way everybody sees things. But if I've never had a glimpse into your world, I think of this as a skyscraper. If I've never visited your floor, I might not realize the different things you see out the window than on my floor. So it's really important to just be open to any experience, even if you don't fully understand in the moment where this might be going. It doesn't always have to be an end game of there's an immediate payoff. And I'm generalizing in this, that we do live in a world that likes an immediate payoff. Think about the scratch off lottery tickets. You think about fast food. If you have to wait in a drive-through, you're angry if they say pull over. You're like, it's fast food. It's like sometimes we just have to put trust in the process. And so just being open to when someone asks you to do something, going, okay, why not? And encouraging your people to do the same thing. It's like, we don't have to be amazing at it. Honestly, we haven't earned the right yet. There's a lot of things that we've got to, do to pay our dues along the way to be able to get to a place where we can call ourselves an expert in something.
Absolutely.
Because we've tried a lot and failed a lot, and sometimes we were successful, sometimes not. But all of it was part of the journey. Absolutely.
The journey is the most important thing, right? Another question which I had was, how can most of the leaders struggle when it comes to the demands from the personal and professional lives. So how can leaders effectively balance the competing demands of their personal and professional lives?
I think about this in the context of my word for this year. It's some people say do a mantra, some people say do a New Year's resolution. So my word for this year is intentional.
Right.
And I think about that from the standpoint of when we get busy with, you look at your day and it's full of meetings, it's full of things you've got to accomplish. Is this in alignment with who I am and what I want to be? Right. And, it goes back to the advice of being open to doing things, but it's also not saying yes to absolutely everything. Right. It's looking at, this makes the most sense for me to go try this right now because I eventually want to be here and I'm probably going to have some experience in doing that. So it's not just being so quick to say yes to everything. And I think as leaders, often we do feel that pressure of if we're not saying yes, then we're failing or we're letting people down but if we're saying yes to everything, how in the world can we ever show up as our best self? Because that's not sustainable. And it's putting that oxygen mask on yourself first so
Right.
that you can help the world breathe. I mean, it's, if I can't breathe, how am I going to be able to help you be able to do that? And so, in a given week for myself, I schedule my personal energy time, which means walking and getting some yoga in. I mean, that's critically important to my well-being. And then just looking at, what clients am I working with? Who am I taking in? Is Hope the right person for
Right.
doing that? And it
Right.
just, we live in a world though that I think, and especially I'm speaking generally in the United States, of the pressure to
Right.
just do it all. You want that perfect photo. You want that shot, of just like showing up and being your best self every day. Well, no. You know what? Some days you show up and you're not your best self. It's just,
Absolutely.
it's the reality of it. But it's just, as I said, I'm holding to that word, and I'm waking up every day of like, what am I going to be intentional about today? What is going to help grow me, grow my business, grow other people that I'm working with, and not just being random and hoping it works out.
Right. Being intentional, very important. Saying no to things, very, very important. Right. So I have one more question about leadership before I have another question from one of the viewers. So as I mentioned in the beginning, leaders can have a positive or a negative impact on communities and society at large. We have a lot of examples of that going around. So how can leaders use their influence and position to make a positive impact on the communities and society at large?
I think it starts with asking for feedback on how you're showing up.
Right.
It's putting the ego aside and making sure that what I think of myself is in alignment with what other people think of me. And, we can make a lot of assumptions around that. And self-awareness is probably one of the hardest things for a lot of us to do. Is just, am I really, how I'm showing up? Is that how other people think I'm showing up? Is that in alignment with what they're thinking? And, I love when I'm working with leaders, when we do 360s, and you find that the boss's perception, the leader's perception, the team's perception are all very different. So it's how can I best serve? And, what I've learned along the way is that I can't serve everyone. It goes back to your question around motivation. I can't serve everyone the exactly same way. I mean, if I own a restaurant, and my family's we're hospitality people. So if I serve everybody in the restaurant a hamburger with a bun, with French fries, can my gluten-free people eat that? Can my vegetarians eat that? There's like 1,000 different needs of people. So it's again goes back to that being in touch of, maybe you need a grilled chicken salad, or maybe you don't really want anything. You just would like a lovely glass of refreshing water. I mean, it's how do I know that? And how do I check in with that? And if I'm not asking for feedback and I'm serving everybody the way that I want to be served, and I've worked with leaders like that, if it's working for me, it should be working for you. And that's not how you best serve. It's not about what you need. It's about what they need. And it's putting that ego aside of like, even if I don't think this is the right thing, if they're telling me this is what I need from you, this is how you need to show up, that is when we are most successful as leaders. And that's, a big step, circling back to the change question. I see a lot of new leaders come in, not even young necessarily, but I say seasoned, come in and want to start changing things before they even understand the climate, the culture, the people. It's like I can't go in. I haven't earned the right yet to go in and tell you what you need. I'm here to help you, and I need to understand your needs. And then how do I be intentional about, kind of redirecting where we're going based on what those needs are? And it's and I can't do that unless I ask for feedback. But, I've had some leaders say, and we've worked on this, is that, if I don't hear anything, I assume it's good. Because if it were bad, they would tell me.
Absolutely.
Guess what they'll do? They'll quit. Yeah. So or worse yet, they'll quit and stay. And you're getting not anything from them. Not from themselves. They're doing the minimum or not even the minimum. And as a leader, I have to look at my accountability and responsibility for how did I influence that to happen.
That's I'm so glad that you took time out to come on the show because I am loving your analogies and the examples you're giving. About serving people. It's very easy to remember these concepts now because of these examples. So, excuse me. I have a couple of questions from viewers. So, first question is, I don't know the name. How would leadership change going into the future?
You have got to learn to be flexible and versatile. And
Right.
I'm working with a number of organizations right now that have called everybody back to work in person.
Right.
They, for the first time in the history of this organization, have a tremendous turnover.
Right.
And I'm just using that as one example because that's really in the organizations I'm working in right now, that this is a struggle now with employees. And it's like, I don't want to come back.
Right.
I want to, and so how does it change in the future? It's, we used to be able to make up a process or procedure and we were probably good for 5-10 years. We don't have to revisit it. Today, it's constantly, as I said, being present with what are the needs? What are people asking for? People today want flexibility.
Right.
Above and beyond, the younger generation, 401k, I'll go invest my own money. I want to work from home at least 2 or 3 days a week. I want to
Right.
be able to have that if I need to leave, go do that.
Right.
I mean, so it's really looking at how are we changing? It's meeting employees more or meeting the needs of people that are coming to us and interviewing organizations more halfway. And I know
Right.
for a lot of organizations, that's a struggle of like, well, I'm paying you to be here. I'm paying you for this job. But people, I think after, what we've gone through have all been reflecting on, I want to contribute more than just showing up every day. And so if I'm not happy, I don't really respect who I work for. This person is not a good leader. I don't feel like I'm making a difference. I'm not contributing. Forget money. I can go make money.
Right.
I want to serve a greater need and a greater purpose. And I think that how we have to do in the future, how that evolves, is we have to be more flexible and versatile in how we allow that to happen and collaborate and ask employees what they need and not just be telling them, I need you here 5 days a week. Well, I wasn't for 2 years and we're successful. Doesn't matter. I need to see you back here. Well, that's not going to fly with most people.
Absolutely.
They'll try. I mean, trust me. I mean, like I said, most organizations they've never had retention issues.
Right.
They are. And so it's, how can we meet them? You don't give into every demand,
Right.
but you've got to give, you've got to meet halfway.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm going to share this video with all my HR friends so that they can go through this at their time. So Joe asked a question which I forgot to include. I wanted to ask this question. He asked, if a team doesn't like change or maybe even fears it, this is a common scenario for every leader I know. What are the first steps to start to develop the culture you're talking about?
Is really bringing people together and allowing them space to talk about it. Right. I mean, and it goes back to the LOVE acronym.
Right.
Listening. But so many times a change, or at least my experience, and yours could be similar, different, is when a change comes down, we just quickly brush past it. I mean, we have to deal with it and just move on. And I don't want to hear you whining. I don't want to hear you complaining.
Right.
It's just, but how do you sit down and listen to your, the concerns of your team? And most of the time I find in these conversations, we can put a lot of this fear to rest.
Right. Because,
there's an acronym for fear, and it wasn't a HOPE one. It's one I've shamelessly stole, but it's, false evidence appearing real. And so many people fear change because we've never done it this way before. Right. And, what I like to do is to engage the people that I like to call are keepers of the failure data.
Right.
Ones that have been around a while. And as soon as they see a change coming that looks like one from the past, they immediately will shoot it down, and they will immediately tell you that it won't work because it didn't work 10 years ago.
Right.
And what I love to do is I love to say, oh my gosh, you were here when it failed.
Right.
So what would it look like if it were successful? Like, what do we have 10 years ago, 5 years ago? I mean, for goodness gracious sake, 1 year ago, what do we have different now that we didn't? And what would it look like if it worked? Right. And when you flip that, you're going to tell if people really want to engage with you with this, or if they're going to be the one that at some point you may have to have a different conversation on. This is where we are going. I would love to have you part of this change journey.
Right.
Culturally, this is where we are. And you know what? It might not be the culture for you anymore. And it isn't always bad when someone leaves. I mean, that's not the end goal. That's not the end goal, especially in today's world. But if somebody doesn't, if that's not where somebody wants to be or get on board with, some of the greatest things that we can do is help someone find a place where they do fit in and they do feel that. So I think where you get started with, it's the human side of it. It's the emotional side of it, because that is, as I say, that is the most left out piece of change, because it is something emotional. And as I said, something is dying or ending and something new is beginning. And even in death, I don't know what my new world looks like. So if I can let people talk about that, grieve the old, let's talk about worst case, what the new might look like. Best case, what does it look like? I think that really, that acknowledges people and their feelings, and that they're valid and you want to hear it.
Absolutely. Thank you, Joe, for that fantastic question. And thank you for that amazing response to that. So I've come to an end, but I have one more question because I need to understand you better. So let's talk about HOPE LLC. What kind of work you do? It's been several years you have been doing this for a lot of organizations across the globe. What kind of programs does HOPE offer? And what kind of clients do you have? Share some insights on that.
I will say that, like I said, I teach, and I tell my mom and dad this all the time. And it's funny to hear my mom tell her friends. She's like, well, my daughter teaches common sense that's not common practice. And I'm like, oh my God, no, you've got to give context. That could be a number of different things. Right. But really, it's how to do what we've talked about today. It's how do I connect? How do I engage in these feedback conversations? So many leaders don't know how to have a feedback conversation. They don't know how to get good constructive feedback to help someone. They don't know how to ask for feedback themselves. They don't know how to motivate a team. I mean, so many people get promoted. I work a lot with manufacturing. I work across industries and globally, but I work a lot in the manufacturing industry. And, there's that struggle with somebody is amazing on the front line. They get promoted. Now they are leading people that they used to be peers with. They go from, buddy to boss. They have no idea. No idea, because it's a different skill set of how are you able to do that. So it's really looking at leadership and looking at each leader at any level, from the C-suite to the front line, and developing that person to be the best leader that they can be. And your best leader and my best leader are not, again, it's not that one size fits all. It's what does this leader have to contribute? And in some cases, does this leader even want to be a leader? Sometimes they get tapped and they're miserable. Their team is miserable. They want to go back to just being an individual contributor. Absolutely. And you know what? That's okay too. That's okay too. But it's really just, in a training setting, via virtually, in person. And then I love the work that I get to do with leaders one-on-one, because we start with that whole feedback process. And some have never done a 360 before. And when I say that, it's just asking for feedback from every angle to find out how close is what I think in alignment with all the groups that I'm interacting with. And then from that, helping develop them to be, again, the best that they can be. And what does that mean? Because every leader struggles with something a little bit different. And I mean, there are some general things we all struggle with, but it's their struggle. It's their journey. And so how can you make what they do better, but not make them a mold of someone else, but it's the best version of them.
Right. Absolutely. I think I will say to this extent that you're doing a favor to the world, because this world that in dire need of good leaders, and your company and your work on personal level as well is contributing a lot to that. I'm super grateful that you took time out to come on the show, and I got to meet you virtually and listen to your thoughts. People are saying it was inspiring and insightful. So thank you so much, Dr. Hope. I hope to stay in touch and learn a lot from you. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you. And thank you for letting me spread hope and love, because, I believe that I was given this name for a reason. And, I will end with this, as I often tell leaders: if I can't bring you hope, I really need to change my name. I need to do something else. I need to do something because, when you've got your name, not only, the helping other people excel is, my acronym for my company, but I'm like, yeah, it's, you don't want someone's name that's hope, that's just not hopeful, that doesn't bring you, doesn't bring you not joy, that doesn't bring you hope. So I feel like I've been given this responsibility in a wonderful way. And I feel honored to meet people like yourself that are out there doing amazing work as well, because I say that it takes a village, a very large village, to raise us as leaders and to lean in and support that. All of us, wherever your village is, I think is critically important. So thank you for inviting me into yours and letting me share, my experiences and my journey. And I wish everyone listening today, yourself included, let's make this an intentional 2023.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Doc. Thank you. Speak to you soon.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. So that was Dr. Hope. I must say that it's much needed. People like Dr. Hope exist and companies like HOPE LLC exist, because trust me, leadership is in short supply. We badly need good leaders. We have been seeing a lot of things. Recently, I quit Twitter because of the toxic leadership. I had a huge community there. I left that community with pain, but it's high time we all stand up against toxic leadership and we all adopt good leadership practices, so that everybody who's working with us, we set the right example and help them in every way possible. I try to do that in my work. I hope every one of us will do that and make everybody's life more beautiful. So that was episode 54. Next week, I have amazing guest who will teach us how to use humor and art to live a beautiful life. So I cannot wait to meet her. When you meet her, you will know what kind of a different personality she is. So let's wait till next Thursday. I wish you all a happy new year again, and take care. This is Thrifty Marketer Talks. See you all next week. Thank you.